Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for giving your time here today to attend the first IKEN live event titled Innovating in a Crisis, How Our Response to COVID-19 Will Shape Our Future. My name is Duncan Booker. I'm from the city of Glasgow. It's my privilege to share today's event and also to speak a little bit on behalf of my city. And this is very much about a conversation across cities. We've had almost 100 people register for this event, from Lisbon, the west of the continent, all the way to Tallinn, and all points in between. Over the next hour, we're going to engage, as I said, in a conversation. We're going to explore how cities are implementing innovative solutions, harnessing new technologies, and embracing new working cultures in order to tackle COVID-19 and mitigate its human and economic impact. But we're also going to explore a bit how innovations that are happening now could have a long-lasting impact, helping us to repair, rebuild, and redesign a hopeful post-lockdown future for our cities, communities, and people. And we've got three great cities to do that. We're going to start with Israel and the great city of Tel Aviv, jewel of the Eastern Mediterranean and one of the most inclusive and diverse cities in the entire region. We're then going to head northwest to Germany, to the great city of Dortmund, one of the powerhouses of the Ruhr Valley, and a great exemplar of a city that's made a successful transition to a post-industrial future. We're then going to carry on moving in a northwesterly direction, and I'm afraid the temperature gets lower and the rain begins to pour as you arrive here in Scotland, in my home city of Glasgow, another of the world's great post-industrial cities, and the proud host of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP26, next year. Now, today's event has been delivered through collaboration with our European Capital of Innovation alumni network called IKEN. The network and platform is powered by Glasgow City Council, the local authority for this area, and the Glasgow City of Science and Innovation, which curates new opportunities for and business sectors, both here locally, nationally, and across Europe, including today's event, to drive greater business innovation and support inclusive growth aims, which help to make our economy work for everyone. Our IKEN platform connects 21 of Europe's leading cities of innovation across researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and investors worldwide to develop fresh ideas, to share best practice, and to unlock the power of co-creation, to transform innovation policy and practice around the world. It was originally conceived as a platform for those cities who had previously taken part in the European Commission's annual iCapital competition, and unaccountably not won, to share their knowledge and best practice. The site is open to all now and provides a unique opportunity to network with experts across Europe, hear about the latest in innovation, and to share best practice. Regular live chats happen on the platform, and they center on various innovation themes. Recent examples include a discussion on drone technology and the future of transport, and much more. We'd love it if you become a part of IKEN and get involved in our forthcoming IKEN chats, including a follow-up discussion taking forward key themes from this event, as well as upcoming chat about potential applications of space data communication technologies. And we'll be sending you more information after this event. Today's event is also part of something called Venture Fest, which is a focal point annually for driving a culture of innovation in business and supporting Scotland's ambition to be a world-leading entrepreneurial and innovative society. You can find out about other relevant events and get involved in wider Venture Fest activities throughout 2020 at venturefest.scot, where you can also sign up to the newsletter for VentFest. Just to flag up a couple of things with you today. We're going to be recording the session today, so if you have any objections to that, it's now time for you to move away. And we'll make it available on the IKEN platform for any colleagues or partners who weren't able to join us here today. Please do feel free to contribute to our conversation via Twitter and use the hashtag IKEN discussion. So we're going to have 3 talks from a panel and then followed by a chance to ask questions and also discuss the topic more widely to share experience from your own city or region or nation. You'll see a chat section on the right hand that you can type questions into, or at the bottom there's a button to raise your hand. digitally if you'd like to contribute to the discussion. So please indicate this by raising your hand, and then we'll come to you after the 3 speeches during the Q&A. Otherwise, feel free to type your questions into the chat box and throughout, and I'll then lead the questions to the speakers at the end and allow a conversation to ensue. So with that having been said, thank you again for participating here today, and I want to introduce our first speaker, who is Leora, the CIO and Smart City Director for the Tel Aviv municipality. She's been in that position for the last 9 years. She's developed a smart city vision for the city that focuses on improving quality of residents' life. And she's also been a chair of the Israeli Municipality CIO Forum for the past 5 years. Shalom, Tel Aviv, and it's over to you, Leora. You can start sharing your screen now.
Say that I'm very happy to be here with you, and you should let me share my screen, because it says that the host has disabled my ability to share the screen. So can you see if you can change that?
Alan, Glenn, I'm looking for you to assist us here. If you can allow Leora to share her screen, please.
We'll try and get that sorted for you, Leora. 2 minutes.
Sure. So I can start without the slide and then combine the presentation. So let me say first that when we started the era of COVID-19, I think we did 3 main issues. The first one was the understanding that the ability to work, the municipality ability to work should change. And we should move everything from the physical buildings of the municipality to the homes. And I believe every municipality has done the same transformation. I will speak briefly only about this section, because I believe it's a common action for every municipality. So thank you for returning my slides. So the first one was the ability for workers to work from home. We had that capability, but the amount of people that were now required to work from home was in a different scale. Because prior to the coronavirus, only IT usually uses that capability. And from now, the whole municipality needed to have the capability. So that was the first stage. The second one was the ability for our call centers to work from home, because you know call centers are very dense places, a lot of people in a very small rooms, and we shortly developed the capability to work from home. And at the peak, I think we had about 90 call centers personnel that worked from home. That was a very interesting experience. And now I will move quickly to the relevant slides, the virtual contact center. And the last trivial thing was to move all of the meeting to a virtual platform. We choose Zoom. We know the shortage of Zoom in the cyber aspect, but it was a very convenient tool. And the nice thing about the process that it begins from the senior management of the municipality, and in 2 days, the whole municipality worked with Zoom, a process that should have lasted about 1 or 2 years in a normal pace. Now in 2 days, everyone in the municipality worked in Zoom. But that as I said, is the trivial part of the coronavirus. The next stage was our understanding that we need new management tools that are relevant only for the coronavirus. So we developed especially for that a lot of tools. And the first one was really a dashboard that illustrates what is happening right now in the city. How many people are sick at what areas of the city? How many elderly people do we have in each section of the city? And so on. It was a combination of data from the government, from the municipality, all combined in one dashboard. And after a while, we understood that it's not relevant only for the municipality managers. So what we did is expose the dashboard to every residence that we have in the city. So it started as an internal tool, and then it became as a tool to be transparent and to show the data to the residents. Second tool that we have is a tool that is real-time management of the city. We have three kinds of data sets: sensors, IoT data that we get on real time. The second was data from residents that report to us if they want to complain, if something is not working as well, and so on. And we have data from the municipality workers, supervisors that are on the street. And we combine all of the data in real time with maps and graphs and so on. That is a tool that we built for day-to-day management of the city. But because of the coronavirus, we really added new data that is relevant for the coronavirus. For instance, the crowding that we have on the street. If someone complains that there's some crowding, then it was an event on our real-time tool. If we had requests from the residents that the municipality will help them, then we put it on the real-time tools. So the idea is that our daily management tool, in this case, became more focused to the events that are relevant for coronavirus. So that's another example, and we have a lot of examples like that, especially manipulating data, because we have our elderly population that needed special attention in times of corona. They needed food supply. They needed attention. So we, from our side, called every elderly in the city and asked if he needs some help. So to get the data about all the elderly, to divide it in a smart way, so someone that takes the food from one elderly to another will not have to cross the city and travel for too long. So to make it efficient and effective, we did a lot of manipulation on the data in order to help our management at the welfare section of the municipality. So that was internal tools that we built especially because it's a special crisis that we are not used to it. And you know, Israel, we are quite trained with the security situation and so on, but the coronavirus was really, had a distinctive behavior that we needed to adjust everything, every operation of the municipality. The next thing is we had to address our residents. And the idea is that the municipality should provide information about that specific event, how to behave. And we needed to hear the residents. We needed to get the call of help and so on. So usually your primary tool for that is your internet site. And you know, Tel Aviv is really called a non-stop city because we are a very vibrant city. Any time of the day you can see action and sports, food events, cultural events along the city, but in the times of Corona, you cannot have it. So we had to change, of course, the slogan from non-stop city to a stop city. And if we have a section that elaborate everything that you have in visiting Tel Aviv, it had to become a stay-home instruction. But that's the easy part. We have, for instance, an app that you can report all of the hazards in the city. So what we did is really add a new kind of event, an event that the elderly can really call us and say, hey, I need a help from the municipality. So it was integrated into our daily tools. Another thing that we developed especially for the coronavirus was a news flash. If we had a new guidance for our population, then everyone that had the app had push-up notification about new guidance from the municipality. And I said that we were a non-stop city, and we have something that is quite unique. We call it our residence club. Digital is the name. And in digital, we organize a lot of free events. Usually it was physical events around the city. And what we did is we didn't stop the events. We just transferred them into the virtual arena. Everything was done in Zoom. Every workshop, every kind of show was moved to the virtual arena, so we could keep our residents occupied during that special period. And the last thing is that we are really blessed with the startup community in Tel Aviv. And we wanted really first to occupy the startups. They were as well at home and didn't have anything to do. And then we wanted really their help as well in facing the challenges. So first of all, we adopted a few of the startups, really the ones that are focused on volunteering. So the first one is a startup that is called Door Le Door. It helps volunteering. It is targeted to the elderly. Volunteering that helps the elderly in buying medicine, changing something, getting groceries, and so on. So they work with our welfare community and help the elderly. And another platform that was brought by the education in the government of Israel that was more popular in the youngsters of our city. But I think the peak of the action was a hackathon that we organized with the Global Resilient City. And the challenges that we face in the hackathon was about the three main challenges that are due to the coronavirus. We had about 300 participants, and really it was a very exciting event, our first virtual hackathon. It had to be virtual, and we are now trying to embrace some of the solutions that were made there. So if I have to conclude, our three tasks are first to move the municipality to work virtually and give them specific tools to this era. The second one were tools to contact and speak with the residents. And the third one is how we leverage innovation in the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leora. That was fantastic. A really fascinating overview of a lot of innovative action undertaken by Tel Aviv. That's really, really great. Thank you. We're going to take questions after all three talks. So we're now going to move on to our next speaker, who is Arturo de la Vega from the Business Support Agency in the city of Dortmund. Arturo has over 15 years of experience in companies and political institutions in Düsseldorf, Berlin, Brussels, and he also maintains working contacts on a regional, national and international level with institutions on behalf of the Dortmund Economic Development Agency. He's going to speak about Dortmund's long-term strategy in dealing with the corona crisis. So, guten Tag, Dortmund, and it's over to you, Arturo. Please share your screen when you're ready.
Okay. Well, let's start this. Well, hi from Dortmund, who will be on Saturday, as we mentioned in the talk before, the home of the football in Europe. But maybe you can learn something from us if it works or it doesn't work with the opening of a professional football. Well, the Business Development Agency in Dortmund, we are about 125 people. With the companies we own, the shares we own, we have around about 300 people working for us in Dortmund in the field of business development. And actually, we are the biggest retailer for startups. So most people don't know it, but we own about 18 startup centers. So we have a slide and overview what is going on in our city and really intertwined with our local business. But I am the chief strategist of the Business Development Agency, and most people in the last weeks made home office. I made the office my home. So I was responsible for everything what's in the 48 hours to develop platform strategies, which I think most of you did. And actually, from the first day, we started working on a long-term strategy, which I will talk now a little bit more. Well, emergency measures, short-term strategies, we did many things. For example, which I always tell people, we actually collected now about 1 million euros only in supporting of pubs, which we started really because in the first week of the shutdown here in Germany, of course, professional football shut down and all the pubs shut down, and we started something we called virtual play days. So people could watch online old games of our football club and go spending money in their favorite pubs to save them, because of course they're closed now for 2 months here in Germany. And we know about 50%, or I think about 500 of them will never open up again. So we started to support local business in different ways, but this was something special we did with our football players. And then suddenly the platform we built mutated. People needed a delivery service. Okay, we installed a delivery service. Suddenly, some businesses needed a web shop, so we added web shop possibilities. Then they needed a streaming support. Then they needed a video tool. And so we started a platform and grew out, and now we have some kind of local public social network. So you see some things we did in the start now mutated into something bigger, and we will continue to do it. But I think what we did different than other cities, at least in Germany, was our platform for procurement, because you see most cities like us, and I think in whole of Europe, had the problem that all the medical equipment wasn't on sale. I think the whole medical market broke down because everybody in the world was actually buying things, and everybody was installing some kind of procurement platform. And we did something different. We talked with the hospital, because the largest hospital in the region is actually of the city of Dortmund. We talked to them, and they gave us about a list of 200 highly used medical equipment, something like a breathing tube, something like a special detergent. And we started to split it up in compounds. To give you a number, if you split up the 200 most used medical equipment, you get about 2 million parts, which built from. And so we started to build something I call like Amazon for medical equipment, because it's like you go to Amazon, you order TV, you get your TV. What's behind Amazon? Like the company that builds the ULED wall, the company who produces a plastic, you don't want to know it. And this is what we built up for hospitals and doctors, actually, so they can order masks, breathing tubes, respirators and everything, and to build it on a regional level. Because as we find out from the 200 products, for example, a breathing tube is only 15 components, and only one has to be medically vented. So the other 14 are things you can produce locally or regionally. And we organized all the logistics behind this, and we will now move from medical equipment to maybe other equipment to start something we call a regional production platform. And the federal government of Germany actually wants to help us, because it would be the first things like this in Germany, as we know, they told us. So, but this was the typical thing we did in the first 48 hours. And then the question rose up, well, what will happen after Corona? Because the question is not only what happens next week, we need answers to what happens next year, in 5 years. How can we come back? To give you some numbers, at the moment in Dortmund, 25% of our companies are on a system of paid leave. So they were not, people didn't lose their jobs because of our social security system, but 25% of all the companies actually not working at the moment means companies will break down, we will lose jobs, we have to think about strategies to regain jobs, we need something. And we did think about what would you do, or what system can we use, and we came to the old stuff, which is the Boston Consulting Group matrix. Nothing very special. You know, the typical matrix consists of what helps you, where are you, which is where you're weak, where you're strong, and how Corona affects everything. This is the question everybody has to see if someone has to develop a strategy for a city. And then, well, you get the 4 parts of your graph, and you see we called them, of course, there were parts that were strong, Corona helps, like IT industry, of course, which are bearer of hope. Then you have for example, all the tourism industry, which is actually, it's over for them this year. So we call them problem children because they were strong, but now they have problems. Then we have other parts where they were not so strong, but we don't know what's happening. We call them question marks. And then, of course, you have the stabilizers. For example, finance industry, energy production. People still have to go to and use electricity. So there you have your stabilizers. And then with a big data analyst, with a company we hired to build us a system, because the problem was to get data. For example, what we did is to monitor consumer data. You can use Instagram because, well, we used about 64 different indicators. But to give you some example, women between 20 and 40, when they're in a crisis, in an economic crisis, they buy clothes. If they don't have so much money, they buy lipsticks. So what do the women post pictures on Instagram? So we made analysis of this to know actually on a daily basis how every branch of economy is going. And then we got to this. So we had, after the first week, we really had an idea which parts of industry, which parts of economy, which parts of social services. We only put some here in the graph. We have about 300 different data points where you can see what is, where are the beer of soap, where the problem children, where have you really problems, which are stabilizers. And so we made us a map to know how to address which branch of economics parts in Dortmund. And these are Dortmund data. It's local data for us, because on a national level, this data may differ. I think they may differ. So it's our local overview, who is at the moment worse standing. And then you have to develop, of course, strategies. This is the most difficult part, because, of course, you have this bearer's hope, like IT, then you need investment strategies. You have to spend money. They have to rise now. then of course you have the stabilizers. You need them as networks because these are the people who actually can spend money investment strategies. Then you have development strategies, like everything that is fair trade business. You have to think how to help all these branches. And then of course you have companies who actually weren't doing very well before Corona and now are, well, on breaking down. There you need real individual strategies. You have to go inside the companies, talk to them, work with them. And then we got to this, which is a simple overview. I don't want to bore you with everything we did and give you one thing actually we're doing, because they asked me to tell you about our Hypertone system. The Hypertone is not a hackathon. We watch the hackathons from, I see, EU versus virus. On Germany, there were many hackathons. And they're great, but they don't help you on a local level. This was something we took away from participating in some. And if you want to develop a long-term strategy on a local level, you need something different. We called it Hypertone because we didn't come up with a better name, sorry. But it says you invite people with a question on one topic. What did we learn about Corona? What we want to do now? And what we want to do in the next 5 years. For example, you can ask our school system. Really, in Germany, it's not very good. But what did we learn with all this homeschooling? What we want to change now in our city? What we want to change in the next 5 years? You can do it with digital services. You can do it with or the health system. And so we're doing now every month one of these hackathons, inviting about 100, 200 people, specialists from our city, and asking them, well, how did you experience all the situation? Well, what does the city need to change? How does companies need to change? Do we need to invest money? So to give you some figures, with the Hypertone, the idea is we will spend about 150 million euros the next year in going up against the crisis and regaining this, they will call it comeback. And we need to spend this 150 million euros in networks and in people we know of who work with us. And this Hypertone is a way to get in contact with networks, even contacts you didn't know in your city. And this is something special. We noticed that nobody actually at the moment is doing, and it's really a long-term strategy. And then you have all agile project teams here who take every topic and then make from these ideas real development strategies or investment strategies. And our plan is to regain our economic strength between next 2-3 years with the system. And I only can tell everybody, every city in Europe, to make this plans now, because in 2 months it will be too late, I think, because we have to consider that about, maybe, I don't know, but in our city, I think 12 to 15% of the people will get out of work. They will lose their jobs. And then you have to have an answer, because at the moment, even in Germany, a little bit of concern is rising about populism, of people using this difficult social situation and giving the people wrong ideas or wrong answers. So you need to have, as a city, an answer and strategy, and telling the people, we will get out of this, we will come back. So if somebody is interested in have a little more detailed explanation, they can contact me every time. I'm available. I'm living at my office right now, and I hope I can leave it on summer for some days off. So thank you very much.
Arturo, that was a really good tour of all the innovative work that the city of Dortmund's been doing. And I know many people will have recognized many of the categories and the areas that you were talking about that will translate well across our cities. As I said, we'll take questions after the third of the 3 presentations, which is from me. I'm Duncan Booker from the city of Glasgow. I was managing the sustainability and resilience agenda, but now I'm seconded to the COP26 planning team. I've chosen not to have a presentation because I wanted to take the opportunity to reflect on what Leora and Arturo were saying, and really to talk about how Glasgow's looking at innovation as part of the post-COVID response. And so I take a series of notes here from what our two previous speakers have said. I just want to respond a little bit to them, as well as to give you an example of Glasgow's perspective. I'll try to be brief. I've just got 5 points I've kind of scribbled down here as I heard the other speakers. My first point is that we are, I think, all very well aware that innovation is not just about technology, but that it requires innovation in policy, governance, in the financial instruments our cities can bring to bear in recovering from the crisis. And that's the kind of innovation that's going to require some very significant level of partnership discussions across sectors, business, public sector, and academic, as well as with our people. But my second point is that in looking at that post-COVID recovery, we need to turn our attention once more to the enemy we already knew was there, the climate emergency. And that hasn't gone away. In fact, it will become even more significant as we've lost time in facing it over the last few months. And for Glasgow especially, one of the key messages we want to get across is that as we look to a more green and inclusive form of economic model, we want to think very much of the just transition in order to ensure that the experience of previous difficult transitions in our economy and the experience of previous recessions is not repeated. And we do not leave our most vulnerable and most least well-off people behind. And that's going to require some real relationship between the state and the free market, and in terms of where we think we can helpfully manage a difficult transition from an economy currently highly dependent on hydrocarbons, perhaps even towards an economy that brings in the concept of well-being much more. My third point that relates to that is that we have seen a huge modal shift in traffic as people have moved away from the cars and public transport and towards active travel. We've seen huge improvements in air quality in all our cities, and we've seen huge improvements in reductions around CO2 emissions as well. But we know there are challenges ahead. We know that the ways in which we can manage a transition back into public transport with the rules of social distancing are going to be very, very difficult. And here in Glasgow, we are looking at how we can use data, how can we use smart cities approaches, and how we can link our friends in the private sector to begin to manage that as we bring back the traffic systems and do not wish everyone to be back in their private motor cars. We've also seen significant changes to the infrastructure of cities, as many have taken the opportunity to allow greater access for pedestrians and for cyclists. And we would not wish to see those advances lost. But again, we need to look at the innovations we need to make in our transport infrastructure to ensure we make a transition to a more active and public transport. My fourth point, really arising from listening to Arturo there with some of the challenges faced in Dortmund, and from Leora and the issues around an aging population, for instance, in Tel Aviv, is about the ways in which we bring innovation to bear with the resilience challenges we're already aware of and we're already seeking to address. To give you just two examples, we know that further automation and robotics will have a significant impact on our economies. This is a form of innovation that requires corresponding levels of social and policy innovation, lest we are to see an even greater hollowing out of the working class blue collar economy as a result of further automation. And one of the policy instruments, one of the innovations that of course has come very much to the fore in our discussions around the world about COVID is about basic income. And whether or not the time is now right for us to explore that as a policy innovation alongside the technical ones that we know about. The other area of resilience and a challenge that we're facing is around increasing levels of loneliness and social isolation, particularly for elderly people. Here in Glasgow, we know that in the next 20 years, the single most significant level of housing tenure will be single person occupancy. That's a really big challenge for us as a public sector, as families no longer look after each other. How can we do so in loco parentis at a time of difficult challenges around resources? And that might require innovation in terms of connectivity, such as the media we're using right now, as well as how robotics can help with personal care services. And that's the kind of innovation that we want to talk about here in Glasgow as well, bringing together technology and social policy. And my final point, the one that's most obvious to everybody on this webinar here today and to our two previous speakers, is that cities are at the heart of this discussion. We often say in Glasgow, when it comes to climate change, nations make pledges, or sometimes find it hard to agree with each other, but it is cities that will deliver on a low carbon and sustainable future. And it is urban policy making where innovation and creativity come to bear. Here in Glasgow, with the 18th century Enlightenment and with the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, we brought together universities, entrepreneurs, people from public policy. And once again, we're drawing on that history across our great cities, all of you on this call, to try to make a better world. And my final point before I open up to questions in a second is to paraphrase some famous words from Marx, who said, "We make our own history, but we do not do so under circumstances of our choosing." And those words are never more apt than now, and our opportunity to try to build a better history in these rather difficult circumstances, not of our choosing, is never greater. There's a real opportunity to reconstruct and recover in ways that build social justice, sustainability, and build upon the best of our innovations. So that's my contribution. I'm now going to open things up to questions. I was just noting as we went along, a few questions are coming up. I have them in order in which they were given. The first is from Kirsty McIntosh. And if I could ask Laura to read it out, please. I don't have access to it on my screen. We'll see who best to direct it to. Laura, can you read out the question from Kirsty McIntosh, please?
Hi, Duncan. Yeah, sure. It is a question for Leora. So Kirsty's asking, what percentage of the city is not connected digitally, and whether it's difficult, for example, to get older people to adopt any technology?
Good question about digital inclusivity. Leora, are you able to address that question, please?
Yeah, of course. First of all, let me say that the majority, real majority, 90% of the population in Tel Aviv are connected digitally. The people are very early adopter of technology, and if you look at population like the elderly, they need to talk with the children, and they usually have smartphones, and usually they know how to operate their phone, generally operating WhatsApp and so on, because that's the way you connect with your family those days. But still, we understand that we have a small percentage of people that do not know how to do it. And we started, especially for the COVID project, to teach the elderly first stage how to use Zoom and how to use a WhatsApp video conference in order to be able them to speak with their families. So we are educating people at the gardens and with the ability of speaking with the phone to educate them how to do that. Right now, we are starting a more wider project, really to give people that do not have the digital instrument, really to buy them tablets, and not only the physical device, but to add context to that. First of all, the ability to connect. The second one, even to have memory games or something to do on your spare time. And the higher level is to connect them with the contact suppliers. So we are trying to bring technology to the small percentage of people that didn't do it. So we are taking that into consideration.
Thank you for your answer, Leora. I'm moving on to the next question that came up sequentially, which is from James Noakes. And if I could ask Laura, again to Mark and James in response to Leora, but an earlier one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so James is asking, he says he'd be interested to know from the city representatives whether or not they believe the changes they've instigated in response to COVID will remain once they're able to move on from the crisis. And I guess that's a little bit similar to the question further down, asking if people have seen examples of innovation that have been kind of accelerated due to the crisis, but which might now kind of open the door to further opportunities or new ways of doing things.
Okay, I'll ask Arturo in the first instance to respond to that, and then I'll say a few words myself from Glasgow. Arturo.
Only because I was laughing at the question, because it's the question. It's really the question. Well, yes and no, of course. Yes and no. You have to look at the larger scales, because crises tend to only to enhance developments that were going on already. So, of course, digitalization, now everybody knows digitalization. Now everybody knows what working at home means. Now everybody knows, but we all knew that this was going to happen. We only saw that it will happen in the next 5 or 10 years. Now we have something that's accelerated all the developments, and now they're here. So everything you saw that will happen the next 5 or 10 years is happening now, and that's it. This is my answer. Things we didn't see something new, actually, would be my answer. Everything that was going on now is here. So if you started making strategies for what will going to happen, what we're going to do with new work is arriving now on a global level, what will we do if digitalization really reaches a global level? Now it's the time. And so I think nothing new will happen on technological or economic ways. Social ways, well, this will be interesting, because the problem is we had already were on the road of a little bit of deglobalization. The trading wars between the United States and China, where we were caught in the middle a little bit, well, it was going on. The deglobalization started with this. So it's nothing new. It's now a situation we didn't pay much attention to on a local level because it wasn't important for us. Now it's here. So, but something on a cultural level, well, deglobalization, I think we have to work against this. Actually, we're building now an institute for promotion of cultural globalization, like food and how international exchange is good for city of Dortmund, everything. And so we're actually doing countermeasures now, because what deglobalization means in the next 10 to 20 years, nobody of us knows actually. But in our point of view, we have to work against this trend, because it's dangerous. So this would be my answer.
Okay.
I'll just say a few words from my perspective here in Glasgow, if I may, as well. I mentioned history earlier. In recent history, in 2008, we had a huge crisis, which led to a deep recession. And we said never again. And we said that we would do things differently. And we said that we would construct maybe a different kind of economy and society. And we, in fact, did not do any of those things, though our ambitions, I think, were sincere at the time. And therefore, there are lessons, I think, about where we go from here. I mentioned in my remarks from Glasgow that we very much want to see a transformative green form of recovery and reconstruction. But equally, the initial stimulus to the economy that's likely to take place will be one based upon traditional hydrocarbons, and particularly, as I said, when people get back into their private motor cars, the fear of public transport. And I think there are real worries there about how we actually maintain our trajectory towards the emergency we already knew was coming in terms of the climate. And obviously COP26 will be held at a date to be determined next year here in Glasgow, and how we build social justice into that. Every previous recession has meant that the least well-off, the most vulnerable, are, I'm afraid to say, the most likely to suffer, the least likely to benefit from economic upturns. And that's a real challenge. Here in Glasgow, in the early 2000s, during very, very positive economic times and record public sector intervention, the people least likely to have benefited from that economic growth, one group I can tell you, tenants of social housing. So in terms of innovation, what do we learn from history? What do we learn from the lessons we already know? Because whilst the crisis around COVID is new, in some ways as a particular assault upon our way of life. All the things we already knew about inequality, about how cities can be good for people and bad depending on where you are in that spectrum, remain to the fore. And therefore, I think the recovery here in Glasgow, this answers maybe another question from someone about policy in Glasgow, is very much how do we get green and inclusive growth? I'm going to go back now to Leora. We had a question from Matthias Weber. That was the third one I saw come up. But can I just ask if anyone's got their hand up, wishes to speak on behalf of their city? Leora, are you able to let me know what's happening there?
Yeah, nobody's got their hand up, but there's a few questions coming in. So the question from Matthias
was the third one I saw.
The question from Matthias was for Arturo. So when it comes to analysing the development of industry sectors, you gave an example of fashion versus lipstick, but in the graph you could only see retail. So he's asking how detailed you went to break the data down to create kind of actionable measures.
Yeah, I
Arturo,
can
answer, please.
Should I answer? Okay. Of course, this was a fun example. Actually, we're monitoring 64 social networks at the moment. In Germany, we have really high and complicated data protection laws. I think one of the most restrictive systems in the world. So we tend to be very creative. Of course, if you see one of these data points, it consists of data of 64 different social networks with 64 different questions. To give you an example, to really know what is going in one industry and the other, the first thing you do is you go to career platforms or career networks. Of course, no city, I think, can pay LinkedIn to sell them their data. For Dortmund, it would be millions. I think for Europe, it would be billions, because data is the thing they're trading in. So, but what you can buy actually for example, from LinkedIn, is when do people access their profile and change it? And then you don't know who's actually changing, but you can know the company where they worked. So actually you don't know exactly which person is doing now what, because we don't want any surveillance, but you notice if in one day 100 people from one company change their CV or access the data, then you know something is going on there, maybe nothing good. So therefore you have one data point from LinkedIn, you have one data point from Instagram. You have to connect this, and the key is this question you're asking the system. So for retail business, from Instagram, of course, you know, how is the consumer market moving? It was not only women what to the present and picture. You can ask many questions, and we have about a system 64 social networks, about 300 different branches, about 15,000 companies, and then you get about 2,000, 3,000 questions, and then you build up your data bound. So actually it's much more complicated, the systems, and you have to develop and build it on your own city, because the question can differ from city to city, I noticed. So you have to adapt and ask yourself. I think it's very necessary that everybody does something like this to have an idea, because all the data we get from Chamber of Commerce, from the federal level, all these economists now working on some studies and everything, the data you will get will be 6 months old, and then you know what happened 6 months ago. So I think it's very useless. What they're doing, and therefore you have to develop your own system. It depends what social networks are used in your city, which behavior of people in companies. For example, the steel industry, the people don't go to LinkedIn, so you have to think about another way. You have to be very creative in this, and then you get your data points. Of course, this is a reference point, and then you have to do it every day, and after 3-4 weeks you see something like that which can be used. And then you can, if you develop strategies and implement them, then you could see, is the point moving or not? And then you have your own little bit of control system. But at the moment, we're starting with this. So we don't know if the strategy we're starting now this week's actually will work. We will see this in 2 or 3 months, I think, some data effects.
Thank you very much for your responses there, Arturo. I'm afraid I'm going to have to start wrapping things up now because time has moved on. I'm conscious we've got quite a few questions, and what I'm going to suggest, therefore, is any questions that's related to a specific city. I do know there are one or two for me here in Glasgow. We'll maybe try and respond to separately out with this event, or else we're going to overrun quite badly. The fear of these events is always of silence. And that we don't get enough questions, and people like me have to filibuster and make stuff up as we go along. A talent I've picked up over the years, I have to say. And the wonderful thing is we've had an excess of questions. We don't have the time to answer all of them. And that's a testament to the kind of interest we've got in this network, which is good news and a good basis on which to continue these conversations. Let me just finish up with a few words. We've heard some really inspiring innovation stories happening across Europe today, across particularly our two presenters from Tel Aviv and Dortmund, and hopefully a perspective that's of interest from Glasgow. This innovation is directly responding to the current crisis, but it's also providing exciting opportunities for positive recovery, and it's opening up new possibilities for how we run our cities in the future, which is very much about the debate we're having within the IKEN network. I was particularly taken by the mixture of economic, smart cities, social policy themes that we all brought across, and as ever, a very people-centered approach from all three cities. That's very exciting. As we move forward, we'll no doubt continue to see more innovations as a result of the crisis. Some will deliver a lasting impact upon our society, and hopefully all of them will help to forge what we are now calling the new normal. I want to say a massive thank you to our speakers. A topic such as this is always developing, so please, we'd love you if you join us on our IKEN platform to continue discussing these themes in the coming weeks and months, and a guide for how to join the network will be distributed after this call to all attendees. Please don't forget to get involved in VentureFest at venturefest.scot, or you can connect via Twitter or LinkedIn. We have recorded this session. We'll make it available online after this event for any colleagues or partners who weren't able to join us today, and we'll be sharing it on the IKEN platform. As I said, particularly for those of you who had questions for Glasgow, I'll try to answer them separately and offline. If you have any further questions or queries, please don't hesitate to contact our colleagues at Glasgow City Science and Innovation, who'll be in touch with all the relevant details. I want to thank especially from here in Glasgow, Leora, Glenn and Helen from Glasgow City of Science and Innovation, Alan from Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, for our two fantastic speakers from Dortmund and from Tel Aviv, and to all of you for participating. Thank you so much. Keep well, stay safe, enjoy the rest of your day, and let's keep talking. It's our cities that will find the solutions. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.